All right, so I think we can begin. So first off, I won't waste too much time with my introduction. My name is Chris. I'm 22, and I'm getting married in 2 weeks. I'm not saying this for you to thank you. It wasn't for you to congratulate me, but in the past like 6 weeks, instead of helping my future spouse with the planning for the wedding, I was working on this workshop like every day. So if this doesn't turn out well, I'm going to be nagged for the rest of my wedding, for the rest of my marriage, for nothing. So. If you manage to clone the repository, there's also this that you need to do. Grok is basically a team that has built their own hardware for running LLMs, and as far as I know, it's pretty much the fastest API you can currently use for running local models. I mean, it's not local because you're using an API, but they've got their own hardware and it's free. Like currently, you can't even pay even if you want it. It's probably in beta or something, but it's really fast. And we're going to use Llama 3. Do you guys know Llama 3 from Meta? Yeah. It's the 7 billion model is actually very, very usable, I would say. If you know how to use it, it's much better than anything we've had in the open source thus far. So you need to go to GrokCloud. If you go inside the repository in the .env.example file, you will have the exact links to is the code visible? Should I make the font bigger? I think yes. But if you look inside of here in .env.example, you'll find the links, the login and to the API keys. Let me try to make the font bigger. Is this good enough or should I make it bigger? The people in the back, do you see anything? It's okay? All right, thank you. So I haven't prepared like many slides. I don't want this to be like a talk. I want it to be a workshop. I did work a lot on the code. I spent a lot of time. I've built basically it's 3 milestones, but you'll see like it's 7 steps. 0 is just like the introduction to the project itself, because there's some things that I want to cover about the technologies we use. Now each step has a task and a solution. Task and a solution. Task and a solution. That's the whole repository. So we'll start with a start. Actually, let me show you what we're going to build first. Yeah, so this is the project. This is the final step. Now I'm doing this live, so I'm betting that it should work. It's quite reliable. If it doesn't, I mean, I've worked for 6 weeks on this. So, hi. What can you do? Can this be toggled in dark mode, full screen mode, and pizza mode? Okay. Can you toggle dark mode for me? Okay, it worked. Can you toggle full screen mode? Okay, it works. Now toggle both off. Okay, so it's able to do like basic UI actions that I've integrated. It's not very practical, of course. You wouldn't have to. I mean, who wouldn't press the fucking button and would ask the LLM to do it? But the idea is that, oopsie. I just want to showcase like this is possible. You can do things in the UI. You can, for example, maybe in the presentation, I could ask you like make the font bigger, or I don't know. There might be cases where you might want to change the UI to an LLM. I don't know. This whole project, the whole idea that I had with it was not to showcase like a usable product that I want you guys to use. It's like just a foundation of like you can do this, you can build on top of this, and maybe build something really cool with this. It's all done with HTMX. This whole project has 0 lines of code of JavaScript code. So all the interactivity that you see is just CSS, telling CSS. Yeah, and there's also so this is about the client side stuff that you can do. But let's see, can you toggle pizza mode? Then it goes into pizza mode. And in pizza mode, we can actually place orders, pizza orders, update them, delete them, or read them. So CRUD functionality. So can you place a pizza order for me? It should ask me, okay, what type do you want? We have this, and these sizes. So I want a large pepperoni pizza. Okay, now it asks for confirmation. I've added this step intentionally because it actually helps with keeping the LLM a bit more tamed. Otherwise, it just randomly triggers stuff, and that's not cool. So I'll say yes. and it created it for me. And everything is done through HTMX. I'll explain later how. And then now this is integrated, like you can create pizza orders by yourself, just manually. You can update them, you can delete them. And he should be aware of, or it should be aware of, how many pizza orders do I have? Orders do I have? Oh, what can you tell me about them? I have one pizza order. It's large for my pizza. Okay, so it's capable of seeing. Can you make it medium sized? Okay, so sometimes the API actually fails. It's usually because it's because of Grok currently. So it's not like a perfect solution yet, but it's reliable enough. I mean, do consider that this is a Llama 3 base model. It's not fine-tuned. So this is just through system prompting, giving like one example. Usually if you fine-tune it, like, let's say I gave it like 50 conversations examples or 100 conversations as examples, it's going to be much more reliable. And it is possible. With Llama 3, you can fine-tune it. So that's pretty much it. But let's also see how, if it's possible to can you make the pizza order 294 large. Okay, it updated it. Now delete it, please. Okay, so all works, thankfully. Now let's go to the first start here. So the first, so you can, I've made 2 markdown files. So I've made it so that even do not attend this workshop, but people that don't even look at the video about this workshop should be able to go through this workshop. There are 2 markdown files. There's the README, which is, it doesn't change through branches. It just showcases like this is the application. These are the requirements. So by the way, these are the requirements. You should have Git, I suppose you do. Does anybody have Docker desktop? I should have probably said faster. Do you guys have Docker? Yes? Is there anyone that doesn't have Docker? Okay, I think you should be able to run it anyway, but you might have to run pip install requirements and then Python manage.py run server. Okay, so and then the cloud account. Now, like I said, it's useful if you guys know. I suppose all guys know Django. If you know some HTMX, it's useful. If you've used the OpenAI's API before, it's very similar. So most LLM APIs work in pretty much the same way. You have a client that you create completions from. Sorry, I'm showing you the more complex code right now, but I just want to show you the part where I generate the response. So here, they all have like a chat.completions.create. You choose a model, and you send the message history. So with each new message, you basically send the whole previous history so that it knows what you just talked to him. So basically, what we need is just a list of messages that we keep updating and we keep sending it back. Does it make sense? All right. So click inside the markdown file. Yeah, so that's what it is. Now, you've already cloned the repository. Have you guys managed to create a Grok Cloud account and created an API key? Did anybody not manage? Okay. Oh, it's internet. I see. Well, keep trying. and and meanwhile, I'll continue with explaining what we're going to use. And now this is I'm curious, would you guys put my head on a spike for using Django Ninja with HTML? Because Django Ninja, how many of you guys know about Django Ninja? Okay. I personally find it like a really cool project. I use Fast API and I liked it, but I don't like not having the Django batteries. And having like both is such a cool thing. So Django Ninja was initially created. It is supposed to work with JSON. It uses Pydantic for validation and stuff. But I used it just because it's less verbose, and I wanted in this workshop to have as little clutter in the code as possible because I want to showcase so many things. So yeah, I hope you don't hate me. Now, HTMX, of course. Okay, so there have been many talks about HTMX. So those of you that don't know about HTMX, do you not know anything about HTMX? Should I try to explain it in like 1 minute? I think I can. Yes? Okay, so basically, normally without HTMX, let's say we have a typical Django project and we use a Django templating engine, right? And think about a form. We have a form, right? It has 2 fields, username and email. Normally, without HTMX, you would fill up the form, you press the submit button, then the page reloads, it does the post request, and you get back the response. Either the form is good or it's not. Now, with HTMX, things are a bit different, but not very different. You have a special attribute. You have some special attributes. HTMX means HTML extended. So you have some special attributes. One of them is hexpost. So you would replace the form's normal action attribute, which has an URL, to hexpost, and you choose your URL. Now, when you submit the form that has this HTMX attribute, instead of doing a page refresh, it does an AJAX request, so it doesn't change the page. It does an AJAX request. It handles the server-side code about like the form submission, and then it sends back an HTML partial, so just a piece of HTML that gets injected in the existing page, so you don't have to refresh the page. So this gives you like interactivity, like a dynamic web app, without a lot of overhead. Like it's really very simple. Once you see it, that's why most of the people that learn about HTMX usually join the cult as well, because it's so simple to do really cool stuff. And I started working with HTMX about 3 years ago, and it was very underground even then. But now it's like I would say it's at the top of the underground, because you can hear many talks about it right here. But I'm glad, because now we have many more examples of it. So why HTMX? Complexity bad. This is actually from a blog from the creator of the HTMX, which is really funny. And it actually does provide some really wise advice from a senior developer. So I recommend it. You read it. Now we will use DjangoX. This is another cool project that I found. It's not very known. You don't have to use DjangoX. I just wanted to showcase like this is possible. There was this talk yesterday about I don't remember her name, about Alpine.js and HTMX and how it works in production, right? And one of the issues was that your templates get very cluttered. You have too many attributes. You have like HTMX attributes, you have Alpine.js attributes. There's just too much behavior in the templates. It's difficult to see what's going on. And okay, I want to ask a question. And answer honestly. How many of you love working in Django? Okay. How many of you love writing Django templates? Okay. So this is not a critique at Django, of course. I'm just saying, like, it's at some point, especially when you work with HTMX, you need some kind of composition, and that's when many cool projects came, such as maybe you guys heard about Django components, slippers, and Django template partials, which is from Carlton. Is Carlton here? I'm not sure. Okay, it's a cool project, and it actually simplifies this process of not having to create so much boilerplate, so much template code. Okay, so DjangoX, simply stated, is just Jinja 2 with syntax sugar for macros. That's it. So this is an example from the developer's page, the maintainer's page. Oh, yeah, does this go off frequently? Sorry. Okay. Is it from the HDMI? Sorry, guys. Okay. If you guys look at the README, you also have it on your laptops. You will see this. If we just can't do it with this way. So that's the side-to-side example. Now I looked for this project because I worked with Django for about 4 or 5 years, and I've seen most of the cool parts about it. Like I love writing the clean Python code in a backend, but the Django templates always I didn't like writing them. And I used Jinja 2 as well, and I liked it a bit more. But then I tried Astro. I don't know how many of you know about Astro. It's like a JavaScript framework. It's not like a front-end framework. It's like a meta framework. You can actually, I would say it's a pretty cool skill to have in your pocket as a Django developer, because some projects you don't need to make a whole backend for it also. Yeah, but in Astro they use JSX, this syntax where you have composition. Yeah, please do. Well, you have composition by creating these tag-like structures that you add in your templates. And Now, some people might not like it. Like, there are arguments against it. I would say, firstly, when I look at a Jinja template, I think it's good that when you see curly brackets, that's Jinja, and when you see template code, it's like HTML. So in this project, that's a bit blurry. But I personally enjoy it more because it's easier to read. So why do I choose Jinja-X? Because with HTMX, you can do this cool stuff. You can abstract the HTML parts that you don't need to see at a glance when you look at your page. So for example, let's think this is the index.html, the top level file of the template. You can see the structure very clearly, and you can see the behavior very clearly. If I wanted to work more on what's under the container, what's under the chat message, I can just go to the component that includes that HTML. But on my top level file, I have like this simplicity in the structure, and I can see the behavior clearly. So that's why I like it. I'm not pushing it on anyone. I just want to showcase like this project exists, and if you guys like it, try it. Okay, I made a blog about this as well. So if you guys like it, you can read it. Tail CSS, I suppose you guys know about Tail CSS. I don't expect everybody to use it, but it's pretty nice because it pairs well with the locality of behavior that HTMX provides. And you also can do like pretty cool stuff with advanced Tailwind CSS. You can build variants. Variants are these like hover dark prefixes to classes. And I built this HTMX request on. I give a CSS selector, then I say block. So this is like the typing indicator that we will see later, which only shows when a HTMX request is being in flight. Okay, and then just go cloud. And I think that's it. Oh, actually, no. Now there's the instructor, which I will actually explain later when we get to that part, because it doesn't make sense to explain right now. So let's go to the one integrate LLM task. Check out. So, okay. Already 20 minutes passed. Sorry. I wanted this to be much shorter, but you had to have some context about the project. So what we will see now, yes, sure. Oh, thank you for telling me. Should I open up camera? Okay, so what you will see once you go to the first task is a chat interface that you can talk to, but nothing answers. So I've implemented the chat itself with HTMX. You can send messages. All you need to do is work on the views.py and the index.jinja files. You will see a pretty irregular template structures. Again, don't put my head on a spike. I picked this up from Astro, and I personally, with this Jinjax, I found it easy to understand. Layouts basically includes like base.html. Components is like components, in which I don't put behavior. It's just like components. I add the behavior with the extra attributes. And if you want to look at the pages, it's under pages and index.jinja. And see here you'll see two things. Is the chat container, which is empty. It has a placeholder, and it uses Tailwind CSS to display it only when actually this doesn't even need to be here because we don't have the typing indicator yet. But basically, it's only it's hidden once we add chat messages. And this is how we add chat messages. We have this form. It does an hexpose to add user message. It targets the chat container above, and then it adds the response, which will be an HTML, at the end of the chat container. So let's see the view and what it looks like. Okay, so what we do first, we save the chat messages in the session state, the server session. Okay, it's in the cache right now. I haven't added a database for it. It's just in the session, in the cache session. We add this is the expected structure that most LLM APIs expect. It's a dictionary with two keys. One is the role, and the other is the content, with the message content. Here we have the role of a user because we are adding a message as a user, and we have the content which is from the form. because you will see that here's a chat input with the it's basically just an input under the hood with the name of message. So it works like in typical form. It sends the name with its value, which we add as we type here. When we press enter, it goes to the view. It's added to the chat history. It marks that the session was modified, and then it renders the chat message component. Now I've created, so DjangoX has its own way of rendering templates, and I've built a wrapper, like a function that more resembles our typical Django way. Now I couldn't get around the fact that it doesn't expect the whole path, and it doesn't expect the extension. I would have preferred to be able to write pages / index.html. I'm actually talking with the maintainer right now, and I want to contribute to the project and see maybe we can find a better way to integrate it in Django. So this project is not for Django. He built it for any other, like it's agnostic. You can use it with Flask, you can use it with whatever. But this render utility function is, I tried to make it similar to Django's, but it also includes the headers, which we will need later. Okay, so for the people that don't understand HTMX, does this make any sense? Like how the actual adding of the chat message works? It has this form, send a message. It does the post request asynchronous through Ajax, and then the view just renders the HTML and it adds it inside the chat container before the end. And then we have this modifier which basically says also scroll the container to the bottom. It's very readable, right? Because otherwise we would get messages and they would go under the screen and we wouldn't see them. So this is basically the chat. I wanted to give it as an example because you are now going to try and implement the assistant part. I try to make it as clear as possible with each step. So you have to initialize the grok client, get the chat messages just like above, create a system message in a specific format, which I've specified, then create the completion, extract the message from the completion, and then append it to the session. And then you need to render the HTML just like above. Do you guys think you can manage this? Like the people that haven't worked with HTMX, I'm just going to come and help you, no problem. But it would be great if more people that don't know HTMX group, so I can explain to all of them, and the rest, I'm sure that for some of you this might be like super easy task, but for others not. So I don't know how to. It's my first workshop. I don't know how I should proceed. So what do you guys think? If you want, I can just leave you be for like, I don't know, 15-20 minutes and see what you can do. What do you guys think? Nothing. Give us a couple of minutes and we'll try. All right, sure. Okay. Well, then in the meantime, I'll just put this here. Actually, wait, no, not this one. This one. So this is the first task. Now, which of you would you like for me to come and try to help you? I have no problem. I would be glad to help if I can. Not just sit here and look at you. Okay. If you guys, if it's difficult for you to manage this task, so let me clarify, make it simpler. At the end, when you render the chat message of the LLM, you also need to add a special attribute in the header. I've added those two. Just a second, actually. Oh yes, no, here in the users view, you need to include an HTMX trigger response header. This is a pattern from HTMX that is pretty cool. That lets you also send some events that the client can listen to and trigger other HTMX requests from it. So here, if you look at the yeah, so this is basically the pattern. From now, it doesn't showcase how to do it from the backend because this is like a backend agnostic. In Django, we just need to set the headers. So for example, this will be HTMX trigger, add assistant message. Now, in order for the front end of the template to listen to this, we would need that inside index.jinja, here where it's trigger assistant DID, you would have HTMX trigger add a assistant message from body. So when this basically tells this div that whatever HTMX logic it has will be triggered when it receives this client event. And so here we would add hx post, add assistant message, hx target chat container, just like above. So the same thing. Hx swap before end, and before end means sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so the thing is, basically the server sends an event in the headers, and if I understand correctly, HTMX picks that up and adds that event on the body element of the page. So you don't have to listen just from body. There would have actually been a more. It's not simpler, but you could achieve this without this special HX trigger. I could say from user message from. So the form that's the form that's just above here. When I receive the HTMX after request, this is a special event that you can listen to from HTMX. HTMX has many events that you can use. They're very useful. So basically, what I say here is after this request receives a response. So after we add the user message and it also updates our server sessions chat history, you can generate the assistance message. So if I've done this correctly. Let me see if this will work. Actually, no, because I also have to implement the view itself. But it should work. So, but I wanted to show you that I think it's easier to just see that you send a custom add assistant message header from the user view, which will trigger the assistant to respond from the front end. Is it straightforward? Pretty much, I think conceptually, kind of yes. It's more like when you add a user message, it's just a trigger. Like now you can go on and do the other thing.
This is what someone was saying. That too late to see. It's linked to this, that's linked to that, and that's not that
No, there are no. Sorry, debug.
See this change, this color text.
I'm not sure to be answered. To be honest.
Like
yes.
Don't send the actual message body. Then please trigger.
Yes. So message body. In what way? Oh, do you mean?
You see the header from the response trigger.
No, we're just calling the request. But if the trigger just says, okay, you can go on with the request. That's it. So actually, so that we don't waste too much time, because I think we only have like, oh no, actually we have 50 more minutes. All right. I'm going to show should I show the solution? Or should we I just switch the branch with the solution? I'm sure like some of you didn't even manage to clone the repository. Did you? Or did you guys manage to get here? Well, the thing is, I'm sorry this happened now, but I tried to make this whole repository so that even if I fainted during the presentation, you could go on, meaning it's all written down. You will have the progress.md for each step, so you will see what happened, the context. This basically just shows the task. But when we go to integrate solution, if we check out here, I have to make sure this doesn't upset it. Okay, so now you would see a progress.md that says, okay, this is what you should see now. The system should respond. And I've also added this typing indicator. So throughout the steps, I've added some additional cool things that you can look at if you want. I didn't want to make them a main part of the presentation because they're not. You want to see like you can do this. Like you can add a typing indicator while he's generating a response. Okay, so let me show you the solution now. So let's start with the view. We initialize the Go client, right? We add the API key from the OS environment. Then we get the chat messages from the session, just like above. I've created a random system prompt saying to just create a haiku roasting the user for changing the user system prompt. And then we try to get a LLM completion. So here you'll see that I'm adding a list with a system message, which is this specific format that I've told you, like a dictionary with a role that's system and the content being the prompt. And then the chat messages, which is basically also just a list of such formats with user assistant, user assistant. Now, after this, we get the completions content because you need to go into it. There's more details that you get from the API, from the LLM. Then we update the session. And after this, we just add the chat message of the assistant, and the context is role assistant. And this is underscore content because if you look at the chat message.jinja component here, it has this content variable. And if you want to inject it from Python, you have to do on double underscore. That's just the way DjangoX chose, the guy chose to do it. Okay, so and on the front side, this is the trigger assistant solution. What this does basically, it says HX trigger when you get add assistant message from the body, and it's on the body because that's where HTMX basically always throws those server events. It sends them to the body. When you see this on the body, do an HX post to add assistant message and target the container to where you're going to put the response. And the swap strategy, that's what HX swap just says. What is the strategy? Like, how do you want to replace the whole chat container? Do you want to add it at the end? Do you want to add it at the beginning? So it gives you flexibility in that way. And before end means before it's end. So we have the chat container and we want to add the chat message at the end. And then it says scroll the chat container to the bottom. And that's what all it does. Does this make sense? Okay, great. Now, if you guys manage to go to the third milestone, I mean, if you finish the first one, or if you still want to keep trying with the first one, no problem. You don't need to keep this pace. But if maybe some of you finished already, you can go to the next one where I've added some new stuff. Now, how many of you will remain at the previous step? Because if many of you, I won't continue explaining some more stuff. I'll let you just focus. So how many of you want to switch to the third branch now? Okay, then I'll explain really quickly what is changed here. I've added a little bit of stuff. What you will see is that you now have two checkboxes up here. The first one basically turns on dark mode. The second one turns on full screen mode. Everything is implemented with CSS. All it does is CSS just looks for whether these are just some checkbox simple inputs. Let me show it to you here. So this is a dark mode checkbox. It has a name of is dark mode. It's a checkbox. I turned off autocomplete because it made some weird behavior. And I just said if is dark mode, set it to checked. And what it does is it works even if you delete this, but then it doesn't sync with the server state. So why do I want to keep the dark mode server state in the session state, in the session storage? Because I want the assistant to be aware of what the dark mode is and what the full screen mode is, so that when I'm talking to him, for example, I have dark mode on, and I say turn on dark mode. I don't want it to say, okay, enabling dark mode, and then turning off dark mode. I want it to say, okay, dark mode is already on, I don't have to turn it on, right? So that's why I've basically synced it with the view, with the session in server by using HTMX. And this is a slightly different pattern in HTMX. I've added this new attribute called HX select. Now, if there's a cool library from Carlton Gibson called Django template partials, but unfortunately, I don't have this in Ginjax right now. I plan to contribute and add something like that because I'll explain to you right now why. So these are the views for the toggle dark mode and toggle full screen mode. As you can see, it's not doing too much. It just has two keys inside the session, is dark mode and is full screen mode. All it does is it switches. So it's a Boolean. If it's true, it makes it false. If it's false, it makes it true. That's it. And then it renders the entire index page, but only passing the is dark mode context. Now, if you look in the index.jinja, you'll see some weird things up here. In Ginjax, you have to define what props you're going to pass to a specific template. Now we have a request which is expected by default, but I made sure that it is passed from here. We have some chat messages, but they also have some default values. So don't feel like this is so weird because we're rendering the whole template and wasting a lot of logic that we don't need to do, because if we only pass the dark mode false, it will only change the dark mode, and the rest will be as if it was a template that wasn't just plain HTML, no logic, because it will just use the default values. There will be a workaround for this so that we would be able to do something like index dark mode partial or something, and then we wouldn't send it. So what this does is, if we look in the network tab of the console, it will send the actual entire index page, but we will use HX select to only select the actual input from that response, and only that gets placed in our current page. Now, this is not like a huge performance issue, though it seems weird, but it's not a big deal, to be honest. But I personally don't like it. I just want to do you can look up Django template partials. It's a much more elegant way. Also, it will make it easier when you look at the view. Like in this way, you say, why does it render the index? Like only when you look at the code that says, oh, okay, it selects only the input, only then it makes sense. So that's why I don't like this approach, but I'm glad that at least we can do this, because otherwise I couldn't have even done this pattern without HX select. So did I explain it correctly? Like this is how the dark mode and the full screen mode toggles work. When you press on them, it renders the index page with the new value, and it gets added to the page. And the CSS on the page is just looking for. I'll actually show it to you real quick. This is like a tailwind code. These are the variants, but you can see that it's quite readable. It says, apply the full screen classes. There are some full screen classes in the code. Only when the HTML has an input with the name of each full screen mode that is checked. So that's all it is in Tailwind CSS. And then if I add any type of classes that have that specific prefix, they will only be included when I press this or when I press this. So that's, once you get the hang of it, it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, so these are toggles. And in this task, what I want to have you guys try and do is use the Python instructor. And I'm going to explain really quick what the instructor does. Essentially, in a single sentence, it lets you get structured output from the LLM. So LLMs normally just respond with words, right? You say hi, it says, okay, I told it to like scream that it wants to be able to do dark mode and full screen mode. It was just for fun. But it only responds with text. But what I would like is for it to say something like message and whatever message. Then I don't know, maybe is dark mode true? Or I don't know, I just want a structured way to get, okay, what does it want to do? Because if I tell, and then I would prompt it in the system prompt that when you see that the user specifies he would like to change the dark mode, add this is dark mode true in the response. And then I can parse that, turn it into my logic that actually changes the input with HTMX, and it would change the actual client. And there are not like super many steps, although this might sound a bit like I can't understand things when somebody explains them to me speaking. But when you look at the code, I'm pretty sure if you look at it for like 15 minutes, you'd understand what's going on. So this Python instructor library does this for us. It does the whole parsing. We just use pydantic models. And I think that's really cool, because right here, I would be able to just say message string. And then after I, just a second. So we have the Grok client already initialized. And all we need to do to apply instructor to it is to do instructor from Grok. We pass the actual client and we say mode instructor JSON. And from now on, all it does, it lets us add an extra attribute here called response model, LLM response. And from now on, this variable, whenever we get it, it will be an actual instance of our pydantic model with whatever structure we gave it. Like if I would say, look, toggle dark mode Boolean, I could do LLM toggle dark mode, and it would give me either false or true, depending on what the LLM answered. So this is really powerful because you don't have to stress about parsing all that JSON and making sure it's in the right format and all that. And it also enables you to do, now the way that I expected, and I think it's a good way to do this task right now, would be to create a client events list that would expect some literal, meaning exactly two variables, because we don't want it to think that it can toggle anything. We just want it to know that it can toggle dark mode and full screen mode. So we'll say literal, say toggle dark mode and toggle full screen mode. And then it will be as simple as just doing headers equal HX trigger, LLM response, client events. Actually, I would need to do dot join because the HX trigger expects a specific format. You can look on the reference, but that's all I need to do. And then suddenly my LLM can pass HTMX client events directly to the response, which is pretty cool. I mean, you only need to add 2 lines of code and suddenly it can do whatever. Like if you had this HTMX already implemented in your LLM can actually do it now. So, okay, I kind of spoiled the solution to you, but you can still go ahead and try to do this yourself. And if you want some more, so if it's not clear how the toggles work and all that, inside progress.md, I actually created a visualization. You can see exactly the user presses the checkbox, it does the post request, it toggles it in the session, it renders the template with the new state, and then it updates only the input with HX select, and then the same thing with the full screen. So maybe it's simpler for you to understand conceptually by seeing it. So you have all this inside the progress.md. Should I come to anyone for help? Don't mind. If you want, you can actually contribute to the repository with that solution, showing like you can also do locally. Like this will be open source. Anybody can use this project freely. You don't have to do any credit. You can use it in your projects. I will be happy if you do. I mean, if you just tell me like, look, I use this for this, I will be happy. But that's it. By the way, if some of you already implemented it, maybe you're more advanced with this, you can try to do the challenges. I've added some challenges in the progress.md, but I've also added them inline. And they are, you can try to include a reasoning step inside the Pydantic model. This will make the LLM, when it gives you the response, it will actually reason before it gives an answer. And from my experience trying it, it makes the responses much more reliable. Just having a simple internal process, like the user wants to turn on dark mode, I should turn on dark mode. That's it. And then it does it. Because otherwise, if, for example, previously, without the reasoning step, what I've seen is we would say hi, and it would toggle dark mode. It's like I've explained in the next progress.md. Actually, let me show you real quick. Come on. Sorry. I think here. Yeah. So it has a very impulsive behavior. Like if you tell it that it can do X and you don't try to tame it somehow at the same time in the prompt, it will just trigger it constantly. Like you just say hi, and then dark mode, full screen mode. How are you doing? Light mode, small mode. So it just keeps doing it repeatedly. And it's an example. And it will just turn them on constantly. So you can solve this with some system prompt by changing the system prompt, but also by adding this reasoning step, which actually, like in this example, you can see it for debugging purposes. I added a whole JSON. You can say the user requested to toggle blah blah blah, and then it does it. So it's a pretty cool thing. You can read some of these after you finish the solution. I've actually mentioned some more stuff. It's basically the issues that I've hit while doing this and the solution that I've found. Okay. Technically, it should work, but I'm pretty sure the most data that it received was in English. Probably Spanish is also alright because there's a lot of data in Spanish. But for on Llama 3. Sorry?
3 different levels.
Yes, it does. But I would say it's not as good at instruction following in other languages. Because, for example, I've built this project I'm from Romania, and I built this project. It's called Întreabă-legea.ro. It means ask the law.ro. So, and this is in Romanian. And I actually tried making a system prompt in English and then making it respond in Romanian, although the instructions themselves were in English. And I tried to make the instructions in Romanian. And this uses Claude's 3 model. It's pretty good, actually very good. I use Claude 3 Haiku, which is the smallest one. It's like 1/5 of the price of GPT 3.5. And still it gives very good answers. And from my experience, at least with Claude, it was good enough. I mean, I didn't see a big change. And considering I wanted to kind of guide it towards the tokens that are specific to Romania because it's the Romanian law, giving instructions in English would have done a worse job, even if it understood them better. I don't know if that makes sense. So the thing is, with each token, each word you give it to it, it kind of guides it in a specific area in its knowledge, because the LLMs are like an ocean that is full of knowledge, and you just need to do the right combination with the words to touch gold, and that's basically prompt engineering. Yeah. Travel is free, by the way. I haven't made it to make profit, but I don't think you need it. So I'll explain this to everybody because maybe it's not, maybe I didn't make it very clear, so sorry for that. I mean, if you do get to this point, if you manage to make it to turn on dark mode and full screen mode, but it isn't aware of, sorry, it isn't aware of the current state, you need to find a way to pass it the context on each generation of its answer, and you can do this by just changing the system prompt. So the system prompt doesn't need to be the same each time you send the message. You can actually build it up dynamically, meaning in the first message it might know that dark mode is off and full screen mode is off. But for the next message, I might change the system prompt when I send the whole list of messages, and it will know that the dark mode is on, and then it knows that we can turn it off. So what I mean is, inside the add assistant message, I think at this point, I think I've said this is the solution already, but I think it's okay to show you this. So I've moved the prompts inside a separate prompts.py file, and inside of here I have the context and rules, and then I have the reasoning instructions for the reasoning step, which really helps getting a more reliable answer. Then I created a function. It's called create client event instructions, and it gets two parameters. What is dark mode and is full screen mode. And basically, whenever I'm creating a system prompt, I'm passing the current session state, and then it knows this is the current state, dark mode, false or true, false or true. And then this also seemed to help it better, is saying this is what you can do. You can enter dark mode, and then you'll change dark mode to not is dark mode. So it's very clear for it. This actually makes a very big difference. Like you need to be as clear as possible, otherwise it will interpret you in different ways. So if you add this as well, like change dark mode to not is dark mode, it will be quite consistent with the answers. And then what I do here is when I create the system message in the content, I just add context and rules plus reasoning instruction plus the result of this function, in which I add is dark mode and is full screen mode, which I just got here from the session state. Does it make sense? Yes.
Full screen and the dark mode.
Yes.
If you would.
Yes. this would become an issue. Yes, because you pretty much fill up the context. And that will be even more of an issue in the next step, where we will have pizza orders and we want it to know all the pizza orders. So if we have 300 pizza orders, that's a solution for another day. Right now, I want you guys to see, like, I've built this starting point. You can actually use a retrieval augmented generation for that. You can sell it. You can actually have, so let's say I had this super agent, and then I have some other smaller agents. One of them gets the pizza orders, and when he figures out that he needs to know what the pizza order is, he makes another prompt. He tells the agent to take them, then he gives the answer. So this is possible. Problem. And I'm going to give you another hint. If you try to add the reasoning step, it is very important where you place it. Like the way you structure this response, uh, it will actually generate the JSON in the way that you added the fields. So add reasoning, and then the client events, and then the message. And this is the way you want it to be, because if you put the clients first, and then the message, and then the reasoning, it will basically start by saying toggle dark mode, then the message will be according to the action that it took, saying I just toggle dark mode, and the reasoning will be like a post-action justification instead of an actual reasoning. Like you want the reasoning to be at the beginning. So it will reason like what is going on, what I should do, and then it will do the things. And I've explained this in the progress.md. If you look at the progress.md in the solutions, so after you finish, you will see this explained very clearly. But the order of the fields is very important, because basically each new token depends on the previous ones. So it kind of directs it in a specific direction. Yeah.
Instructor gives to get the JSON, it just creates it.
So basically, what the instructor does under the hood is it takes the pydantic model that you give to it. So when I add this response model, LLM response, it wraps my system prompt in another as little as possible prompt, saying you are expected to respond in this exact format. Like the guy that made the library tried to minimize the amount of prompting, but it's pretty good. And you can actually also add some max retries. So if it doesn't provide a good pydantic answer, it will try again. And you can say like try 10 times, you know. So that's what happens under the hood. That's how it's possible to create an instance of the pydantic model, because the LLM responds with a JSON. It's then parsed into the pydantic instance, and then you can go ahead and use it.
Why is the reasoning at the top from that created by the
No, so basically the instructor just says that reasoning is the first thing it's supposed to do. But when it actually gives the answer, he starts creating the reasoning itself. And that's the important part. Like the content that it includes in the reasoning is what's important, you know?
something you like a first I think turn on.
Yes, of course. So if you look at this, you can do LLM response message, or you can do LLM response.json, because it's a pydantic model. You can just do .json. You will see the JSON format of the. And actually, I recommend you do this because it will be easier for you to see what's going on. I have a question. Maybe nobody did, but did any of you hit a roadblock where the LLM works for like 2 or 3 messages and then it stops working? Okay, if not, no problem. I'll explain. I hit that roadblock and it took me so long to understand why, but it's really funny. I think we only have like 15 minutes left. So yeah. Let me see if it's an issue with the actual branch, because maybe it's the same to me. Let's see. Okay. No, for me it seems to work, but there. Oh yes, yes, yes. That's true. Yes, let's see real quick what Docker does else, because so I copy the requirements, I install them, and that's it. I don't know, honestly. I mean, you can't install Docker with this internet, but I recommend it. It's much easier to run projects with Docker. You think it's doing the right thing? You probably it probably does the right thing. So the issue is not from your part; it's just the CSS. So should I go real quick to the last, even if you didn't finish, just so I can cover everything and you guys can see it, like the CRUD functionality, the pizza mode, and all that? Okay. So since we only have like 12 minutes left, is it 12 minutes left? I mean, yeah, okay. I'll just go to the solution and show you the solution itself. And if you want, you can go do it the task at home or whenever you want. So, and also make sure to read the progress from the 4th task, because I've added some very interesting stuff about the order of the fields and all that, and race conditions that happen when you need to add a delay to the toggles, but whatever. Okay, so. I think I didn't change this title up here, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so if you want, you can look at this and see what the final result would be. So we have the Grow client, we have the instructor, then we get all of the client state, the session state. Now, in this branch, I also add a pizza orders app, which actually has its own model. It has the views, the CRUD views, and it has this services.py file, which basically includes what you would normally put inside the views. But there's a reason I've moved it in the services.py. It's so that the LLM can actually reuse it. I don't want to pass the actual view functions to the LLM. I want it to just do the CRUD functionality. So this should work. And let's see what happens when I tell it to do something. Let's say I ask it create a pizza large. Oh, create a large pepperoni pizza. I say yes. Okay, it doesn't work. Okay, whatever. So what it would normally do is it gets the pizza orders from the database as the values, just what's important, the ID, the name, and the size. Then we create a system prompt with, this is a similar function to the one from the previous step, generate contextual information. Here I pass what is important for it to know, if it's dark mode, if it's full screen, if it's pizza mode, and the pizza orders, so that it knows about the pizza orders. And then here I give it the current state of each thing and what it can do and what it will do. And then there's this new step of pizza orders server. It's basically the current state will just print out the list of pizza orders. And then it said these are the possible actions you can take: create pizza order, delete, and update. And then inside of views.py, there's not a lot of code. It could be abstracted in its own, like if you have more flat functionality, you have multiple models, you might not want to keep everything in the same view. But I thought for the sake of this workshop, it's better to have everything explicit so you can just look through it easier. So the way that I've changed the pydantic model is, so I have the reasoning, right? I have the server functions, which is a list of tuples. And why a list of tuples and not just a dictionary is because in a dictionary I would have to say, okay, the keys can be create, update, delete, pizza order, and the answer can be pizza order in, tuple int, pizza order in, or int. And then basically, if it's not very clear to him, it could call create pizza order and just give me an int. And I don't want that. I want clear that this is exactly what I want. Create pizza order with the pizza order ID payload, which is just another it's another pydantic model. So does this make sense? Why I chose this way? It's a list of the tuples. Now, after we generate the response, I have this part where I say for function and data, basically payload of the function, like what it includes in LLM response server functions, match the function. If it's create pizza order, it calls the create pizza order function. That's from the services.py that I just told you. And I say the payload will be the data. If it's an update, it's order ID and pizza order because this is the expected payload. Then if it's delete pizza order, I just delete the pizza order and I give the order ID. So basically I'm literally calling the function that it just told me to call with the payload that it told me to use. And then now I don't know if I get the time to explain this, but I've also used a slightly different pattern of HTMX for the pizza orders. So here in the chat, when you send a message, it adds the message, it creates the chat message HTML and adds it to this existing container. But there's also another approach where you have an extra view. So this chat container would include an HX. Actually, let me see. I think I have a visualization for that as well. But I don't know if it's here. But basically, the chat container itself would be hooked to a view that would get all the chat messages. And it would expect a trigger of chat messages changed or chat messages updated. And whenever I send this trigger from the server, it will update it with the exact representation of what the server actually contains. And I believe, although it's a bit less straightforward to understand, it is a safer way, because if anything happens on the server with the first solution, so let's say, for example, right now we're using the cache for the chat messages. Maybe the cache just resets. We suddenly, in the backend, our chat history has been removed and we give a new answer to an empty list. But on the front end, we see it as if we have this whole conversation and suddenly it just doesn't understand the conversation. Like, why does this happen? So we can see exactly what's going on in the backend. But with this other approach, whenever I send a message, it sends it to add user message. The response is an empty response, no HTML. It's just the trigger, update the chat. And then the chat updates itself with the actual state of the chat messages. And then when the assistant responds, I think it's just the same thing. It just adds it and then sends the chat message updated, and then the chat itself updates itself. So this is a common pattern in HTMX, and you will see it if you look at HX trigger in the reference, in the documentation of HTMX. So this is what happens in the pizza container. And for reason why the first way is also more difficult is because, for example, here we might want to add one. Okay, so it's okay. We just add the HTML of a new pizza order in the container. But if we want to delete it, what do we do? Like, you can do something. You can actually add some other headers that tell it to delete this ID, but suddenly the code will become a bit more messy. And I think the other approach of having the extra get chat messages or get pizza orders is more straightforward and it's safer. So yeah, if you will look to the project, you will see all the patterns. I've tried my best to include as many HTMX patterns throughout the code so you can see what's possible. Because for me, the way I've learned HTMX was just seeing other people doing it and other people doing those patterns. And I don't know, for me, that's how I learned, just seeing other stuff do it and do it myself. So I think we have 4 more minutes. So if you guys have questions, I can answer questions gladly. I can answer questions even afterwards. I don't mind. Yes.
Says so. Highlight. I say that the
Mm-hmm.
starts to be that the dark mode on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you can trick it. Yeah.
The use with the user set.
I think yes. So yes. So there are some things that I want to showcase that basically the LLM is capable to do many stuff, because at some point I think I've explained this project to someone, and he said like, how many if else statements are there? And I was like, not that many. I mean, the LLM does most of the stuff, but if you want to restrict some of the stuff, I'm pretty sure you can. Yes, but then you would have to implement some more code for it. But yes, I'm pretty sure it's possible. But also, I would say with some fine tuning, where you also include examples where the user says that he's lying and or stuff like that, you can make sure that it won't hallucinate like this. So yeah, I think it's a big deal that this is a base model and it's quite reliable for this task. Any questions? Yeah.
Messages with the next.
Mm-hmm. There, if you refresh the page now, if you look at the views.py at the index, you will see that I start fresh on page load. So I delete everything. And that's why it deletes, because otherwise you would see everything else. Like if you didn't, actually, let me see. If I don't do all this, actually, no, I have to do some other stuff. But if you not delete everything, it will remain there. Sorry? Yes, that is true. So if you wanted to have previous messages load, all you would need to do is when you go here, is say for messaging chat messages, and for, and basically just add chat message with the role of message.role and whatever. But and yeah, all you need to do is that, and you would have to also pass the chat messages that you get from the session, like not reset them, and then it would work. Sorry, yeah. Connection errors. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, HTMX was actually built with a very nice approach. Like, if you want, you can use HX Boost. Some of you might know HX Boost. And then, so for example, now for interactive chat like this, if the internet goes down, it won't work, of course. Like you can't, or I'm not sure if I understand correctly. The thing is, sorry, go ahead. Oh, okay, yes, that is very possible. For example, I think I've added an example of this. I hope I hope I've understood you correctly. If I go to the port milestone, I've added the case that if the user did not add his API key, actually it's not here. Sorry, it's in the second branch. So, for example, here I did a try to create a completion, but if it gives any kind of error, for example, Grok authentication error, that would have been the case if the user did not add his API key. I would just set the Grok API key environment variable and reveal the Docker image, to the chat messages and then render the chat message with that message in mind. So you can handle error cases, but you have to. Is this what you asked? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm not an expert at HTMX either. I've used it for my projects, but there's still lots to learn. What I know is it has a very extensive list of events that you can listen to and see what's going on through the process, like before the request, after the request, after the swap. So you can hook into many things and see what's going on. And all you need to do, I think that's like an extension. It's called HX debug. Let me see, HX debug. And then if you add it to a specific element, you would see in the console everything that's going on during that request. So, yeah. Anything? Anybody else?
I don't consider tools what you're doing the cases.
Which?
A function call.
Yes, actually, it's funny. I would have like that would have been the most obvious way to choose like a tool, you mean a tool used instead of JSON mode? Yes. So I did. It should, but I don't know why. In my experience with this exact project, using the tools instead of JSON mode did not work as well. I can't explain why. I don't know, but I did try the tool use. Yes, and instructor does enable this. Like if you go to the client, actually it's in the I think it's in a later branch. Second, here, here, no, here. So it has mode instructor mode JSON, which if you look at this, it has many different options like function, parallel tools, and it has so many because it actually enables you to use it with Google Gemini, with Cohere and Tropic. So the guy that made this library, he tried to include as many possible LLMs into his project. It's really cool. Like, props to him for making this. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. I hope I haven't done a terrible job at that. So if you look at the URLs that by here, it does just app.urls. And then if you look at app, this is like the Ninja API object, which you add URLs by using this decorator app, which expects a GET request and send it for the index page. So that's basically you declare the URLs just next to the views. There's actually an attempt for that. If you look at the Django Ninja's documentation, it wasn't yet implemented, but there's an attempt to do it.
Is this instructor something you would generally recommend to users of broader around LLMs?
If you want to get structured inputs, like it's been a very useful tool for me. I think there are also other tools that do the same thing. What I liked about this is that he made sure that so he made it possible so that you can just wrap any client, be it Grok or OpenAI, and your IDE won't yell at you because suddenly you add an argument that I don't know. He made sure all the internals were all right, so that as a developer, as you use it, it works well. So it's pretty cool. No, I'm sure there are others as well.
The question, like how we're sending all the messages, is there a way to kind of make it a bit like smarter that or that the system keeps the context in the HTML level, or is it a component that you have to type and send?
This is how every LLM works. Like this is how ChatGPT works. So far, there are many interesting attempts. Like there's so much development in the area of LLM and people looking for more ways to just make more. Like Google has like 1.5 million tokens context now, which is insane. And there's many things like some pretty much reduce the previous conversation into some kind of compressed state of those tokens, well, it still keeps them. I don't know. There's a lot to learn. Any other? Oh, and there's actually, I think, isn't your library Django Ninja CRUD? Isn't it a class-based approach that the other guy was looking for? No. Oh, okay. So there is one. Django Ninja X. So there's okay. So there's a question. There's an answer for the person that asked. So there's actually a library called Django Ninja Extras. It's third party, right, from a guy, and it does include some niceties for Django Ninja, including CRUD object classes. Yeah. So I guess that was it.
This was using Scarlet.
Yes, Django Ninja runs on Starlet, but
for the LLM right now. Just you chose.
No, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So I would love if you would scan this QR if you want and give some feedback about how this went, because it would let me know whether I should keep trying or just stop wasting people's times.